What if I told you that right now, as you're watching this video, you're probably trapped in a psychological prison that's slowly destroying your mind, and the scariest part, you don't even know you're in it. In 1961, legendary psychologist Jung discovered something terrifying. He found 7 invisible mental environments that are literally rewiring 90% of people's brains to work against them. These aren't physical places, they're psychological traps that you walk into every single day without realizing it. Jung treated a patient who seemed completely normal on the surface, but was slowly losing his sanity. This man had a good job, a loving family, seemed to have it all together. But Jung traced his mental breakdown to 7 specific psychological spaces he inhabited daily. Once Jung helped him escape these mental traps, his transformation was so dramatic that he went on to become a therapist himself. Today, I'm going to show you exactly which psychological environments are breaking your mind, how to recognize when you're trapped in them, and Jung's proven escape protocol that can save your sanity. Because what you're about to discover will change how you see every relationship, every room, and every decision for the rest of your life. The echo chamber, where your mind goes to die. The first and most dangerous psychological environment Jung identified as what he called the echo chamber, a place where every voice around you mirrors your own thoughts, beliefs, and biases back to you until they feel like absolute truth. Jung's patients spent hours each day in social clubs, political gatherings, and online forums where everyone shared his exact views, fears, and anger towards certain groups. He thought he was staying informed, but Jung realized he was getting psychologically poisoned. Here's what happens to your brain in an echo chamber. Your neural pathway is literally weakened. Dr. Matthew Lieberman's groundbreaking research at UCLA proves what Jung observed decades ago. When you're never challenged intellectually, your critical thinking muscles atrophy like unused limbs. Jung called this collective possession, when group thinking completely replaces individual thought. The patient stopped questioning anything because questioning felt like betrayal to his tribe. His worldview became rigid, fragile, and terrified of different perspectives. He couldn't even consider that he might be wrong about anything without feeling like his entire identity was under attack. Warning signs. You're trapped. You can predict exactly what everyone around you will say about any topic. Different opinions don't feel intellectually interesting. They feel personally threatening. You've completely stopped asking "what if I'm wrong?" about your core beliefs. Your conversations reinforce rather than challenge your thinking. Discovered that people in echo chambers don't just stop growing, they start shrinking. Their minds become smaller, more fearful, and completely dependent on the group for psychological safety. They become intellectual children who can't think for themselves. But here's where it gets really scary. Echo chambers don't just make you mentally weak, they make you vulnerable to every other psychological trap. When you lose your ability to think critically, you become easy prey for manipulation, comparison, and every toxic environment you encounter. Think about your social media feeds, your friend groups, your news sources. If they're all telling you the same things, confirming what you already believe, feeding your existing biases, you're in an echo chamber, and it's slowly destroying your ability to think clearly. Patient described it perfectly. I felt so secure in my beliefs until someone challenged them. Then I realized my convictions were actually just borrowed opinions I'd never examined. I wasn't confident, I was brainwashed. The first step to freedom is recognizing when you're trapped. Start seeking out intelligent people who disagree with you. Read books that challenge your assumptions. Join conversations where your ideas might be questioned. It's uncomfortable, but discomfort is the price of intellectual freedom. When you escape the echo chamber, something amazing happens. Your mind starts growing again. You develop intellectual humility. You become curious instead of defensive. You realize that changing your mind isn't weakness, it's evolution. But here's the terrifying part Jung discovered. Once the echo chamber weakens your critical thinking, you become vulnerable to the second psychological trap. The comparison arena, where success becomes poison. Once the echo chamber has weakened your mental defenses, you become vulnerable to the second dangerous environment. Jung identified the comparison arena, a psychological space where your worth is measured against everyone else's achievements, status, and success. Jung's patient, already fragile from echo chamber thinking, started obsessively comparing his life to others in his social circle. Every success story from acquaintances felt like personal failure. Every achievement felt meaningless because someone else had accomplished more, faster, better. Dr. Rachel Callejero's research at the University of the West of England proves what Jung observed. Constant comparison literally shrinks the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for self-worth and decision. Your brain physically changes when you live in this environment. Here's what's truly insidious about the comparison arena. It doesn't motivate you to improve. Instead, it trains your brain to find inadequacy everywhere you look. Jung called this the inflation-deflation cycle. You either feel superior or inferior, never simply yourself. I got promoted at work, the patient told Jung, but all I could think about was how my college friend became CEO faster. My achievement became meaningless because it wasn't a relative victory. This is the poison of comparison. It steals joy from every success. Social media has turned the comparison arena into a 24/7 psychological battlefield. Instagram highlights, LinkedIn achievements, Facebook life updates. Everyone's presenting their highlight reel while you're comparing it to your behind-the-scenes struggles. Warning signs: you're trapped. Other people's success makes you feel like a failure. You achieve goals but feel empty because someone did it better. You edit your life to match what looks successful rather than what feels right. Your happiness depends entirely on being ahead of others. Jung realized this environment is particularly deadly because it disconnects you from your own values and desires. You stop pursuing what brings you joy and start chasing what brings recognition. You become a slave to external validation. The comparison arena is a race with no finish line. No matter what you achieve, there's always someone who's done more. The patient described it. I climbed the mountain I thought would make me happy, only to discover there were 100 higher peaks I hadn't seen before. Comparison doesn't just steal your joy, it steals your authenticity. You start making decisions based on how they'll look to others rather than how they feel to you. Your life becomes a performance designed to impress people who are too busy comparing themselves to others to even notice. Neuroscientist Dr. Mauricio Delgado's research shows that comparison addiction triggers the same brain patterns as substance abuse. You literally become addicted to the dopamine hit of feeling superior, and you need bigger and bigger wins to feel normal. I realized I had never asked myself what I actually wanted, the patient told Jung. Every goal, every decision, every choice was based on what would make me look successful compared to others. I was living someone else's definition of a good life. Jung taught his patient to practice what he called internal validation. Instead of asking, how does this compare to others? Start asking, does this align with my values? Does this bring me genuine satisfaction? Am I growing? When you escape the comparison arena, you discover something revolutionary. Your worth isn't relative. Your achievements don't need to outshine others to matter. Your path doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be valid. But Jung discovered something even more dangerous. The comparison arena, with its constant external focus, makes you vulnerable to the third psychological trap, a place where authenticity goes to die. The performance theater, where your soul disappears. The third dangerous environment Jung identified as perhaps the most insidious because it's socially rewarded. The performance theater, a psychological space where authenticity is punished and you're rewarded only for wearing the perfect mask. Jung's patient worked in a corporate environment where showing any vulnerability was career suicide. He learned to laugh at jokes that weren't funny, agree with ideas he opposed, and hide any part of himself that didn't fit the company culture. Sound familiar? Jung called this persona identification, when the mask you wear becomes the only identity you recognize. The patient told Jung, I don't know who I am anymore. I've been performing for so long that the real me feels like a stranger. This environment is psychologically deadly because it trains you to abandon yourself gradually. Each compromise feels small, a fake laugh here, a hidden opinion there, but they compound into complete self-betrayal. You become complicit in your own erasure. Dr. Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion shows that people trapped in performance theaters develop severe inner critics. They internalize the harsh judgment of these environments and carry it everywhere, becoming their own worst enemy. In American culture, performance theater is everywhere. Corporate environments that punish negative emotions, social situations where vulnerability is seen as weakness, dating apps where everyone performs an idealized version of themselves. We've created a society that rewards performance over authenticity. Warning: Signs: you're trapped. You feel exhausted after social interactions, instead of energized. You catch yourself agreeing with things you don't believe. You're afraid to share opinions that might be unpopular. You feel like you're wearing a costume you can't take off. Your real thoughts and feelings seem dangerous or inappropriate. I became so good at being what others wanted that I forgot what I wanted, the patient told Jung, and when I tried to remember, there was nothing there. This is the ultimate horror of the performance theater. It doesn't just hide your authentic self, it erases it. Performance theater destroys genuine connection. How can anyone love you if they don't know you? How can you feel truly accepted when you're constantly performing? The patient realized all his relationships were based on his mask, not his authentic self. Constant performance is exhausting. You're always monitoring yourself, editing your responses, calculating what will get the best reaction. There's no rest, no genuine expression, no authentic connection with others or yourself. The cruelest part is that performance often leads to external success, which reinforces the behavior. The patient got promotions, praise, and social acceptance, but felt completely empty inside. Success built on performance is success that belongs to your mask, not to you. Jung observed that people trapped in performance theater eventually face an identity crisis. They've been performing so long they can't access their authentic selves. They literally don't know who they are beneath the performance. Performance theater doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. When you're performing, you unconsciously pressure others to perform too. Authenticity becomes dangerous, vulnerability becomes weakness, and real connection becomes impossible. American workplace culture is particularly toxic in this regard. We reward emotional labor, punish authenticity, and create environments where people spend 40+ hours a week betraying themselves for a paycheck. Leaving the performance theater is terrifying, because it means disappointing people who prefer your mask to your authentic self. But Jung taught his patient a revolutionary truth. Relationships based on false performance aren't real relationships at all. The way out requires what Jung called authentic rebellion, the courage to disappoint others in service of being real. It means risking rejection, criticism, and loss of approval in exchange for genuine connection and self-respect. But Jung discovered that performance theater creates a specific vulnerability. When you've been hiding your authentic self for so long, you become susceptible to the fourth dangerous environment, the silent suffering space where pain goes to fester. The fourth dangerous environment Jung identified is one that looks peaceful on the surface, but is actually a psychological poison. The silent suffering space, where emotional needs are buried under the illusion of stability and love, is assumed, but never expressed. Jung encountered this constantly in his practice. Patients from perfect families, where problems were ignored rather than addressed, where keeping up appearances mattered more than genuine connection, where peace was maintained. By avoiding all difficult conversations, Jung's patient came from exactly this type of family. We never fought, he told Jung, but we never really talked either. I learned that having needs was selfish, and expressing pain was weakness. This is the silent suffering space, where emotional starvation masquerades as family harmony. Jung called this emotional starvation. Your emotional needs don't disappear when ignored. They fester in the unconscious, creating anxiety, depression, and inexplicable emptiness. It's like having an infected wound that's covered by a beautiful bandage. Dr. Sue Johnson's research on attachment proves what Jung observed. Emotional suppression in relationships literally dysregulates the nervous system. Your body stays in chronic stress because your emotional needs are constantly unmet. Even in loving relationships, this is particularly epidemic in American culture, where we've confused conflict avoidance with peace, where positive thinking means denying negative emotions, where asking for emotional support is seen as weakness or neediness. The most dangerous aspect of this environment is how normal it feels. The patient told Jung, "I thought we were a close family because we never had conflict. I didn't realize that avoiding conflict also meant avoiding intimacy." Warning signs: you're trapped. You feel lonely even when surrounded by people. You've learned to cope with pain rather than heal from it. Asking for emotional support feels selfish or weak. You have strong feelings but nowhere safe to express them. The peace in your relationships feels brittle, like it could shatter if you're too honest. Jung discovered that people in this space develop a profound disconnection from their own emotional reality. They know something is wrong but can't name it because naming it would break the family or group's unspoken rules about what's acceptable to feel or express. This environment isn't limited to families. American workplaces are full of silent suffering, places where stress is normalized, where burnout is a badge of honor, where expressing difficulty is seen as inability to handle the job. People from silent, suffering spaces often recreate this pattern in their romantic relationships. They choose partners who also avoid difficult conversations, creating a cycle of emotional distance disguised as compatibility. The body keeps score of unexpressed emotions. Jung's patient developed chronic headaches, digestive issues, and insomnia, his body expressing what his mouth couldn't say. Modern research confirms that emotional suppression literally makes you sick. Silent suffering spaces create generational patterns. Parents who can't express emotions raise children who can't express emotions, passing down emotional starvation like a family heirloom. I realized that my family's love was conditional on my silence. The patient told Jung, we could love each other as long as no one needed anything. The moment someone expressed pain or need, the love disappeared. The cruel irony is that silent suffering prevents the very intimacy it's trying to protect. You can't have deep connection without vulnerable communication. Peace without authenticity isn't peace, it's emotional death. Jung taught his patient that healing required learning entirely new communication skills, expressing needs, setting boundaries, asking for support. These were skills his family had never modeled, so he had to learn them as an adult. When one person breaks the silent suffering pattern, it gives others permission to be real. The patient's sister started expressing her own buried feelings. His father admitted to depression he'd hidden for decades, but Jung discovered that silent suffering creates a specific vulnerability. When you've been avoiding your emotions for so long, you become susceptible to the fifth dangerous environment, the chaos storm, where your inner voice drowns. The opposite extreme. The fifth dangerous environment, Jung identified, is the exact opposite of silent suffering, but equally destructive. The chaos storm, where constant mental stimulation drowns out your inner voice until you literally can't hear yourself think. The modern addiction. Jung's patient lived in this state constantly. Newspapers demanding his attention, radio programs feeding anxiety, social gatherings draining his energy, work demands following him home. He filled every quiet moment with reading, conversation, or activity because silence felt absolutely unbearable. The avoidance revealed. But Jung realized this wasn't preference, it was avoidance. The patient was terrified of what he might discover in stillness. Unresolved pain, difficult decisions, or parts of himself he didn't want to face. The chaos wasn't stimulation, it was medication. The brain damage. Dr. Adam Gazzale's research at UCSF shows that chronic mental stimulation literally impairs your ability to form coherent thoughts and make clear decisions. Your prefrontal cortex becomes overwhelmed and starts making impulsive choices just to reduce cognitive load. The fragmentation. Jung called this psychic fragmentation, when your attention is so scattered that you lose the ability to integrate experiences into wisdom. The patient consumed enormous amounts of information but couldn't make sense of any of it. He knew everything and understood nothing. The American lifestyle. This environment has become the default American lifestyle. We're constantly connected, perpetually stimulated, addicted to information, terrified of boredom. We've created a culture that mistakes busyness for productivity and noise for engagement. The addiction cycle. Here's the trap Jung discovered. Chaos becomes addictive. Your brain adapts to high stimulation and starts craving more intense input to feel normal. Quiet moments trigger anxiety because your nervous system has forgotten how to regulate. Warning signs, you're trapped. Silence makes you immediately reach for your phone, turn on music, or start talking. You have strong opinions about everything, but deep understanding of nothing. You feel busy but can't remember what you accomplished. Slowing down triggers anxiety rather than peace. You consume information constantly but feel empty inside. The wisdom killer. Jung understood that wisdom only emerges in contemplative space. When you're constantly stimulated, you can't process experiences, integrate lessons, or access your inner guidance. You become an information addict with no actual insight. The patient's confession. I stay busy because when I stop, all the things I'm avoiding catch up with me, the patient told Jung. But I'm so tired of running. This is the exhaustion of the chaos storm. You're running from yourself at full speed, 24/7. The decision paralysis people in chaos storms struggle with. Decision-making because they can't access their inner wisdom. They seek endless external input, polls, advice, and research, but can't sit quietly long enough to know what they actually want or need. The relationship impact. Chaos storm addicts make terrible partners because they can't be present. They're always distracted, always multitasking, always somewhere else mentally. Intimacy requires presence, which requires stillness. The digital amplification. Social media and smartphones have turned the chaos storm into a 24/7 environment. We're carrying notification machines that ensure we never have to face a quiet moment. We've technologically guaranteed our own mental fragmentation. The anxiety connection. Jung observed that chaos storm addicts often develop anxiety disorders because their nervous systems are constantly overstimulated. What they think is anxiety is often just their brain crying out for rest. The creativity killer. Constant stimulation destroys creativity because creative insights emerge in quiet spaces. When you're always consuming information, you never create anything original. You become a human copy-paste machine. The escape protocol. Jung taught his patient to gradually increase his tolerance for stillness. Start with 5 minutes of silence. No phone, no music, no distractions. Just sit with whatever comes up. The anxiety is temporary. The wisdom is permanent. The transformation. When you escape the chaos storm, something miraculous happens. You start hearing your inner voice again. You develop genuine preferences instead of borrowed opinions. You make decisions from wisdom rather than impulse. But Jung discovered the most insidious truth. The chaos storm is often covering up the sixth dangerous environment, the place where you systematically betray yourself. Conclusion. The path to psychological freedom. Jung's discovery of these 7 psychological environments reveals the blueprint for modern mental enslavement and the path to freedom. His patient's transformation from a man slowly losing his mind to someone who reclaimed his psychological sovereignty proves that escape is possible. The journey requires courage to face uncomfortable truths, discipline to change ingrained patterns, and the revolutionary act of choosing growth over comfort. But the reward, genuine mental freedom, authentic relationships, and the ability to think clearly in a world designed to fragment your attention, makes every step worth taking. Your mind is not your enemy, but the places you allow it to inhabit might be. The choice is yours. Remain trapped in environments that diminish you, or fight for the psychological sovereignty that Jung proved was possible for anyone brave enough to seek it.